messy beginning. The daily COVID briefings are now once again a part of the daily cycle of news here in the UK, as the coronavirus figures have become more and more distressing. And yesterday, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, was taking the briefing, flanked by a senior police officer and a senior medic. Seeing day by day these people of power has got me thinking about power, by which I simply mean having the ability to change things, power and the limits of power. We're speaking to each other through YouTube, and some while before Christmas I discovered on YouTube an American TV drama called Countdown to D-Day, which I watched. It covers the 2 weeks or so leading up to June the 6th, 1944, and the invasion of Europe in the final year of World War II. And the drama focuses on Dwight Eisenhower, Ike as he's known, the supreme commander of the Allied forces, played by Tom Selleck. It is an extraordinary story for a drama. Here is a man who is orchestrating an operation of nearly 7,000 vessels, 11,000 aircraft, more than that in fact, 150,000 soldiers, with another 2 million waiting to cross the channel behind them. It is a terrifying responsibility to shoulder, and Churchill says to him at one point that no human in history has held the power that he is about to wield. But after 90 minutes of watching the programme, I was struck, and remain struck rather more, by the limits to Eisenhower's power. Two limits in particular, one natural and the other human. Before the operation starts, Eisenhower and his colleagues are almost at the mercy of nature. They have to have the right tides and the right moonlight, essential for seaborne and airborne operations. Those things at least can be predicted with some precision. But also they need the right weather, and they're dealing with British weather, which is very hard to predict with any precision. The heights of waves, the speed of wind, the amount of cloud, these will mean the difference between likely success and near certain catastrophe. A figure I feel particularly for is a man called Group Captain Stagg, who has to keep bringing Eisenhower one gloomy weather map after another. The second limit to power is the human one. When Eisenhower gives the order to go, the scene around him in the headquarters becomes frenzied in its activity, and he stands unmoving in the middle of it, and at one point turns to a colleague, reminds him of what Churchill said about him being the most powerful human being in history, and then says, well, now I'm just in the audience. Once the order is given, a corporal or a private on one of the landing beaches will affect the outcome of this operation, not him. It's up to them now, he says. Well, whether or not Eisenhower ever actually said those or other words in the programme, I don't know. But those words, goodness me, they're true. And it's a truth that must day by day be borne in upon modern political leaders, especially in open societies like the one that I live in. This paradox as we grapple with the coronavirus, that we are to a degree at the mercy or subject to nature, but also those who lead us are limited in their power by very, very human considerations. When a Prime Minister or a Cabinet Minister finishes the briefing, turns from the cameras and walks away from the podium, after they've thanked us for all the good we're doing, exhorting us to try even harder, and rebuking those of us who haven't kept to the rules, as they walk away at the end, some phrase, much like Eisenhower's, might come into their mind. Well, it's up to them now. The police, of course, can enforce the law up to a point, but not in every person's life. And much of what we have to do now, it goes way beyond the law. It's about choices. It's about taking responsibility for what's prudent in your particular circumstances. This was something we had to do at the Cathedral earlier this week. We asked ourselves the question, can we offer congregational worship in these circumstances? Yes, we can. It's not against the law. Should we offer congregational worship in these circumstances? And then followed a soul-searching conversation in which, as we looked at the evidence, particularly for the locality in which we're set, we decided no, this is something we should not do, even though we can. Another church in a different place with different circumstances will go through an equally soul-searching debate and come up with the other answer. Yes, they can, and yes, they should for the time being. So what is it that makes us move one way or the other in a debate like that? What makes us behave as we do when we ask questions, well, what can we do? What should we do? And how should we do it? The first influence is fear, and as it should be up to a point. My fear for my own health, my fear for the health of someone else who's close to me, who I care about. Also the fear of sanction, of doing the wrong thing and being caught. Well, that explains our motivation in these days up to a point, but there's more in play than that. There's a lot of invoking of common sense. Not in really the most helpful. It's helpful up to a point, but very often the considerations are quite complex. And common sense is essentially a pragmatic judgment. There's more, or there should be more in play here. A sense of accountability that goes beyond being caught or not being caught, and goes beyond purely pragmatic considerations. What is it that makes you want to do the right thing, even when you know you'll probably get away with doing the opposite? We come here to the realm of conscience. If you're old enough to remember the year 1968 and that year of ferment and student riots and so on, well, conscience in some ways got a bit of a bad press in those days, and has done in some people's minds since. There was a phrase in the late 60s, the cop in your head, seeing your conscience as essentially a repressive organ. The police were outside you to stop you doing things, and there was a police officer inside your head telling you not to do things, even when the other police couldn't get to you. Well, there are lots of things that are not very good about that analysis of conscience. First of all, it's a travesty of what policing is. Good policing is about very, very much more than repression. It's about encouragement and working alongside the society in which you're set, rather more than doing things to that society. But also, there is vastly more to human conscience than repression. Rather than the metaphor of the cop in your head, I prefer to use another metaphor of a voice in the head, if you like to put it there, a voice that calls me by name, a voice that talks less to evoke fear than to inspire love and desire. That's another way of talking about conscience, this inner prompting that urges or invites or pushes you in one direction rather than another. Of course, the human conscience is never infallible, and it certainly needs feeding, it needs nourishing. That's a vast amount of what the Christian life is about. But paying attention to conscience, to the inner prompting, is the basis for any true and flourishing, a truly human society, certainly one that flourishes. Whether it's here in the UK, as we think about how best alongside one another to contend with the coronavirus, or whether it's the members of the US Congress, I think even as I speak, debating whether to impeach their president or not. It's about being prompted by a thought that tells you that what others may say about you matters less than what you and God know. It reminds me of some words I've used in these reflections before by John Henry Newman. I think they're worth repeating because the language he uses fits so precisely the task that is the shared task among us in these days. And we hear these words in the middle of a paradox. The paradox that though we are separated by space and need to be, we have never been more bound together in a shared, a mutual destiny. So here, or here again if you heard them last time, are John Henry Newman's words. Words that spring not from fear and repression, but from love and desire. God has created me to do him some definite service. I have my mission. I am a link in the chain, a bond of connection between persons. He has not created me for naught. I shall do good. I shall do his work. Thank you for listening. Join me now if you would like to, in other words of love and desire, the words of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Thank you, and may God be with you.